Hi students, welcome to the MemoNeet. Myself Pratikya, your biology SME. So in this video, we are going to discuss or I'm going to summarize the entire plant kingdom in just one slot, okay? So I'll be discussing all the important topics regarding the plant kingdom and the classifications. So yeah, so plant kingdom, there have been again, there are some groups which comes under the plant kingdom like algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms, right? So it is how the evolutionary takes place. Like this is like from the lower to the higher. Like algae, you'll see then bryophytes, then pteridophytes, where gymnosperms, and the end you will see actually angiosperm, which is having fully bears the flower, which is actually a sexual reproduction. The complete sexual reproduction can be seen in angiosperms. So coming to the very first thing, that is algae. Algae, they are actually, see, one thing is, very basic thing is algae are green in color. So they are also called, so they are green in color because they have a pigment which is actually called as chlorophyll. So even color gets varies, okay? Even in algae, not only every algae will be in green in color. So color varies based on the pigments which is present in the algae. So they are actually the chlorophyllc bearing simple, thyroid, autotrophic, and largely aquatic. That means they normally live in both fresh as well as marine water. So they occur in variety of their habits. Like you will find them in a moist stone. It might be in what do you say, the soil, sometimes even in the wood, moist wood region, you'll actually find the algae. Some of them also occur in an association with the fungi. Algae can also be found associated with the fungi, like lichens and animals like slot beer. So you can see in a slot beer, you'll be seeing algae has been associated with its air. Okay, so the algae, when it comes to their reproduction, they normally reproduce by all the three modes, that is vegetative, sexual, and asexual mode of reproduction. So when coming to the vegetative mode of reproduction, it is actually by the fragmentation. So they divide, or a part of the algae gets cut, and that is from the parent which the part got cut off, right? So that will develop into a new individual. So that is each fragment develops into a thylus. Then coming to the asexual mode of reproduction, it is actually by the production of different types of spores. So like the most common bearing spores are zoospores. So they are normally motile, that is flagellated, and on germination, they give rise to a new plant. So coming to the sexual mode of reproduction. So what about the sexual mode of reproduction? The algae, they takes place through the fusion of two gametes here. So these gametes can either be flagellated or similar in size. If they are flagellated and similar in size, in some of the species you can see, like they are actually called as isogamy. Like you can see here in the isogamy. So what happens here is the both the gametes are of same size, that is equal size, the male as well as female. So they are of equal size. So such gametes are actually called as isogametes. Then we have as anisogametes. See, in anisogametes, what happens? Fusion of two gametes takes place which are dissimilar in their size. That means you can see like one of the gametes and another gametes, they are dissimilar in that size. So again, there might be presence of flagella or non-flagella, it depends. So there, if there is a dissimilar size gametes get fused, okay, so it is actually called as anisogametes. This is another point. And the last one is, which is oogamy. So coming to the oogame, so that I am going to see the fusion of one large non-motile, okay, which is actually a female gamete, and another one which is small motile, which has the flagella, which I can term it as male gametes. So these two, get fused. So that is actually called as oogame or oogamus, okay. And these are the examples for what do you say that? Isogamous, and some of the examples can also be in anisogamous, and these are the example for Volvex, and Fucus are an example for oogamy. So this is very important. In exams, they might ask you regarding this isogamy, anisogamy, and oogamy. So therefore, it is very important. Next, being the photosynthetic, like I told you that it consists of the chlorophyll. So they what are the functions they perform is they increase the level of dissolved oxygen in the immediate environment, that is in the present environment where they are present. So they are of a par, they're very important as a primary producers of energy rich components which form the basis of the food cycle for all aquatic animals. That is, the algae are also rich in energy, and some algae have been consumed by the aquatic beings, that is aquatic animals. So therefore they act as a primary source or primary production of energy rich food or energy rich components. So many species of Porparia, laminaria, and sargassum are among the 70 species of the marine algae which are being used as the food. So these are the species which have been used or it has been consumed as a food. Certain marine brown and red algae, so brown and red algae, they also produce a large amount of hydrocolloids. Hydrocolloids are nothing but they have water holding substances. Okay. Example, um, algin, that is brown algae, and carrageen, which is actually called as red algae. So they are being also used commercially because they have a water holdings capacity. Then it has been also used as agar. So agar is one of the most important commercial product which is being used for gelidium and garcelleriae. So which are being used to grow microbes. So in most of the microbial laboratory or in medical institutions and all, agar are being used for the solidification of the liquid media. Okay, so that it becomes a very specific environment for the growth of the microorganisms, and even it is being used in the industrial purpose for the ice cream, jelly, chocolate preparation. Chlorella, which is actually a unicellular algae, but it is very rich in protein. So which is actually very rich in protein, is also being used as food supplement. Even space travelers, they use them as a food supplement. Then again, these algae have been divided into three major classes. What are those? Chlorophyceae, Phagophyceae, and Rhodophyceae. Chlorophyceae. So commonly these chlorophyceae is actually called as green algae. So because the body it contains of the chlorophyll pigment is more, so they have dominant with the chlorophyll A and B. So the plant body may be unicellular or colonial or filamentous. So the pigment are actually located in the definite chloroplast. Okay. So the chloroplast may be discoid like plate-like structure. It could be cup-shaped structure. It could be spherical in structure or ribbon-shaped in structure. So they get differ from species to species. Members have one or more, stronger bodies called as peridions, which are actually located in the chloroplast, which is again very important. So these perid so these peridions they contains a protein which is actually called as starch. Okay, some algae acts as a storage of food in the form of oil droplets. So green algae usually have a rigid cell wall, which is made up of inner layer of cellulose and an outer layer of pectose. So coming to its reproduction, vegetative reproduction usually takes place by fragmentation or by the formation of different types of spores. Asexual reproduction is actually by the flagellated zoospores produced in the zoosporangia. Then coming to the sexual reproduction, it shows considerable variation in the type and formation of sexual cells, and it may be isogamous, anisogamous, or oogamous. Then some common, algae which are found are like green algae are Plasmodium and Wallwax, then Electrox, then Spirogyra and Chara. So these are some of the examples for the green algae. Then we have brown algae, which is actually called as Phagocytaceae. Phagocytaceae, which is commonly called as brown algae, they are found primary in the marine habitats. So they ranges from a single branches filamentous form to branched like structure, which represent a chain or key like structure, which may ranges in the height of 100 meters. So they again possesses the chlorophyll A, C, carotenoids, and xanthophytes. So they vary in color from olive green to the various shades of brown depending upon the amount of the xanthophyll pigment which is present in them, and fucoxanthin pigment also. So this is again very important. Okay. So food is stored as complex carbohydrates, which may be in the form of laminin or mannitol. That is nothing but the food is actually stored as a complex carbohydrates. So in what form? Laminin or mannitol form. Okay. Then the vegetative cell has a cellulose wall, usually which is covered on the outside by the gelatin coating of the algin. Then the protoplasm contains an addition to the plastids. So what happened? A certain located vacuoles and nucleoles are also present. So the plant body is usually attached to the substratum, and that is they normally attach to some of the other substratum, and it also have a stalk for the attachment. Then the strip and leaf like photosynthetic organ are also found. Asexual reproduction is mostly seen in the brown algae, is actually by the biflagellated zoospores that are pear-shaped and have two unequal laterally attached flagella. That means, so if it is something like unequally attached flagella, if one flagella is big and another flagella is small, something like that. Coming to the sexual mode of reproduction, so all the three, that is isogamous, anisogamous, oogamous mode of reproduction can be seen. Okay. So this is happens by the union of the gametes may takes place in the water or within the oogonium, that is within the oogonium species itself. Then the gametes are what kind of shape? Pear-shaped. Pyroform is nothing but pear-shaped and bears two laterally attached flagella as I have shown here. So the common features of the features are ectocarpus, that means example. Common forms are ectocarpus, then dictylota, then laminaria, sargassum, fucus are some of the example for brown algae. The next one we have is Rhodophyceae. So coming to the Rhodophyceae, they are commonly called as red algae here because of the pigment which is very predominant, that is red pigment. Phycoerythrin is something which is actually present in the body. Majority of the red algae are marine with greater concentration which is found in the warmer areas. They occur in both well-lighted regions closer to the surface of the water and also at a great depths in oceans where relatively little lighter penetration takes place. So there also you can actually see these organisms. The red thalli of most of the red algae are actually multicellular. Some of them have complex body organisms, right? Organization. The food is actually stored as fluoridinase starch, which is very similar to the amylopectin and the glycogen in the structure. So that means it actually similar representation to the amylopectin and glycogen in the structure. So the red algae usually reproduce through vegetative by fragmentation. They reproduce asexual by non-motile spores and sexually by the non-motile gametes. That is the last, which is actually I called as oogametes, right? So and accompanied by the complete post-fertilization development. The common members of these red algae are Polycyphania and Porphyria, then Garcilaria and Gelidium are some of the examples for the red algae. After that, it will be the bryophytes, right? So, what do you mean by bryophytes? And what are the things that we need to concentrate in bryophytes? So, they includes various mosses and the liverworts that are being found commonly in the moisty, shady areas in the hills region and all. So, they all are actually bryophytes. And another very important or the major thing of the bryophytes is they're actually called as amphibians of the plant kingdom because they act as a linkage, like they can be in water as well as land. Like what happens is for the sexual reproduction and all, they normally depend on water, whereas they normally live in land. Like the adult plants, they normally live in land. So they prefer to be present in the damp, they occur or basically they prefer in damp and humid and shady localities or shady places. And they play a very important role in breaking down of rocks and soil. So the question like which among them plays an important role in plant succession on bare rocks or soil can also be used. Next talk is the plant body of the bryophytes is more or different, just like algae you can see, but it is thallus. That means you can actually see a very a kind of structures can be seen. Okay, they are either erect or prostrate, and they are actually are always they will be attached to some rock. That is, they attach to some substrate. By what? By unicellular or multicellular rhizoids. So it will be kind of like this. Okay. So if it is rock, so they'll always be attached on the substrate, that is rocks or some plants or other trees. So by either unicellular or multicellular rhizoids. So they actually lack this true root. Okay. Instead of roots, they also lack stem, they also lack leaves. That is true leaves, true roots, true stems, they lack. So instead of those, they actually possess some like root like then stem like structure. Okay. So the main plant body of these bryophytes will always be haploid in nature. And they normally produce a gamete, hence they are actually called as gametophytes. And the sex organs in the bryophytes are multicellular sex organs. So the male sex organs and female sex organs will be present. So in male sex organs are actually called as antheridium and they process what? Biflagellate anthrozoids. Whereas in female sex organs, they are actually called as archaeogonium, which is flask-shaped structure, and it normally produces only single egg. So now what happened? This anthriozoids, which is the male sex organ, is being released into the water, and they come in contact with the archaeogonium, fusion happens. So once a fusion happens, that is, once they come in contact with each other, right? As a result, what happened? Egg is being produced, and the produced egg is actually called as zygote. But zygote immediately it will not undergo the reduction division. Getting so immediately it will not undergo reduction division. So they produce a kind of multiple. That means immediately it will not undergo uh, division. It could be cell division. Clear? Like there will be if once the zygote is formed, there will be two nuclei will be there. So later on, that nuclei is again going to fuse. So now these sporophyte. is actually not a free living, but they are attached to they're attached to the photosynthetic gametophyte and gives the nourishment for and then that the sporophytes are nothing but now they are something called after the fusion zygote is formed they develop into the sporophytes. So these sporophytes are actually not free living but they normally attach in some of the photosynthetic gametophyte that are parent gametophyte, and from there them they will be getting all the nourishments. Some cells of these sporophytes, they undergo this meiotic division or meiosis, and later on they start producing this haploid spores. And these spores later on they are going to germinate to produce a gametophyte. Okay, that is individual gametophyte. So bryophytes in general they are having a very little economic importance, but they act as a food, herbaceous food for some herbivorous animals, birds and other animals also. And as I told, it helps in soil formation, and it actually provides a mat on the surface so that it is going to minimize the soil erosion, and also they can be used as fuels or can packing materials, and since they have water holding capacity they can be used as a packing materials. So these are some of the importance of this biofresh. Next, mosses along with the lichens, like mosses and lichens are more, right? So they, as I told, they helps in what? Soil formation, hence they have a great economical importance also. Then they also acts as a decomposing the rock, making them suitable to grow for the other plants, higher plants. Like they'll make the rock into soils and they'll provide some basic environment by fertiling it and all. So that will help the higher plants to grow that. And okay, if there is a rainfall happens or wind, if there is a very strong flow of wind, so it normally prevents soil erosion because it acts as a mat, a dense mat on the soil. So these bryophytes have been divided into liverworts as well as mosses. So what are liverworts? I'll just try to explain it very simple, briefly. So they normally grow in moist, steady places where streams are there and all. So basically, wherever moist, woody places are there, they normally grow in the shady region, under tree, something like that. The plant body is thyroid, that is Markentia. If you take an example of it, so they're basically thyroid. That means they are somewhat closely apparent to the substrate. They're somewhat closely, apparent or they're attached to the substance. And the leafy members have tiny leaf appearance can be seen here. Okay, so in two rows or stem-like structure can also be seen here. Coming to its reproduction mode, if I'm talking about asexual reproduction, it actually takes place by fragmentation of thalli. Okay, the one of the part of the plant will get fragmented, from there a new developed plant will get. So that is one point. Or by formation of specialized structure called as gemme, which is actually called as gemma. So these gemme or gemma, they are basically green in color, multicellular, and they are asexual buds. So these asexual buds will later on becomes what? Which develop into gemma cup, okay, which will be located in the thalli region. So if it is something like leaf, okay, if you consider something like leaf, so you'll actually see a kind of the structure which is actually called as gemma cup. Okay, so this is how it happens. So now this gamma cup, will detach from the parent body and germinate into new individual. So during sexual reproduction, what happens then? So during sexual reproduction, again, there will be both male and female organs are produced either on the same or on the different thalli region. So once it has been formed, obviously fertilization will happen, right? Then we will get the development of the sporophyte. So they are differentiated. Then the sporophytes will, get gametes. Then to the sporophyte, these sporophytes will later on grow, differentiate into food region, then seta and capsule. After meiosis, what happens? These spores are produced within the capsule itself. Then the last one, that is meiosis. So what do you mean by meiosis? Like, what about meiosis? So in this stage, what happens? It becomes one of the predominant stage in the gametophyte, which consists of two stages. The first stage is protonema stage, and the second stage is direct development directly from the spore. So the first stage will be the protonema stage, where which develops directly from the spore. This is first stage. So what happens here? They are basically they will be green in color. They will be branch and filamentous also. So the second stage will be developmental stage, that is leafy stage, which develops from the secondary protonema as a lateral bud. Like, this is the protonema stage will be your very first stage. Okay. So after protonema stage, what happens? We are going to see the secondary protonema, that is the lateral bud stage. Yeah. So they consist of upright axis bearing spherically arranged leaves. Somewhat spherically arranged leaves will be seen here. Then they are attached to the soil through multicellular and branched rhizoids. Again, you won't see any true, leaf, stem, and roots here. Root-like, leaf-like, stem-like will be absorbed. So the whatever the function is being doing by whom? By rhizoids now. Clear? So after this, we have sex organs. When it comes to vegetative reproduction, it is by meiosis, that is by the fragmentation and budding is the secondary protonema. In sexual reproduction, it is by sex organs, that is anthrida and archeogonia are being produced. Okay, where at the axil of the leaf shoot region, they are actually produced. Clear. So now what happens? So after fertilization, the zygote will get developed, and when the zygote develop into the sporophyte, and after sporophyte, it consists of food, seed as well as capsule. So then this sporophyte in the mosses is more elaborate when compared to the liverworts. You can easily observe them. Then the capsule contains the spores, and they are formed after the meiosis, and the mosses have an elaborate mechanism of spore dispersion. Okay. Common examples are also be given here. So this is about the bryophytes. And in the next topic or in the next video, I'll be explaining remaining three in detail. Okay.